it'll happen every single time we go to the home show. Somebody will walk up and they'll say, "Oh, your water heaters just don't work like they used to." And I'll go, "Oh, you're not getting hot water?" No, the hot water's fine, but our clothes aren't drying in the hot water cupboard anymore. Oh, yeah, that's because the insulation has changed over the last 50 years. We don't have that heat loss anymore. Rheem started in the late 50s, and originally it was based in Wellington. And they were making all sorts of different things. And then over the years, they started getting into copper water heaters. So we're one of the few countries in the world where we have two different pressure types of water. So most people probably don't recognize it, but if you go, and most households now would turn on their cold water tap, and then you would get it would be quite strong, versus maybe the hot water tap. And that's because they probably got a low pressure copper system, which is what we started making years ago. And then in the late 70s or early 70s, us, New Zealand, and the rest of the world started moving to mains pressure. So at that point, though, we thought mains pressure would die out completely. I mean, we're talking 50 years ago now. But low pressure is still going. We're one of only two countries in the world that still has low pressure systems. So Rheem's been trying to accommodate Kiwis for at least the last 50 years with this different pressure type. So you get copper and you get steel storage cylinders, and those copper ones. The only other country I think is in the UK has got the same pressure system as us, as New Zealand. So we have to actually specially source it. And the reason why we haven't ditched it is, you can imagine your normal household, mum and dad, the water heater breaks. They've got lots of bills to pay, and they want to get it changed out. And if we didn't have that, they would have to change valving, shower mixers, because it doesn't just affect the water heater, it affects the whole sort of plumbing system you've got in your house.
Ah, right. So when you're going in there to fix someone's hot water because it's broken down, it's more than just the cylinder that we're probably used to seeing in the hot water cupboard. It's the piping as well through to all of the taps, or is it just the kitchen, or is it just the shower?
Bathroom and kitchen, because you'd have what most people call a mixer nowadays. You get kitchen sink mixer that has one handle that you can turn it either way to get hot or cold. You've got those two sort of dome taps that are normally on a shower, or sometimes in a kitchen or on a bathroom. And those little systems can't accommodate the pressure. So if it probably means, it doesn't mean a lot to most people, but you're going from say 75 or 120 kPa to almost 500 kPa for mains pressure. So it basically just blow the taps, and if it didn't, they would just start leaking behind the wall. And then you could get a lot of damage over time. So you'd have to replace a lot. So Rheem started off those same cylinders that they were making back in the 60s. We're still making them today. So that's to accommodate mums and dads. Like I say, if it broke down and a plumber comes around and says, "Look, you should upgrade to mains pressure," which most people should. Get a better shower, better pressure, and they go, "All right, what's that going to cost me?" And it's like, well, you're going to have to replace the shower mixers, some of the taps, and probably some of the piping and valving. So and another thing Rheem's probably known for is those wall-mounted zips.
Yes, you see those in office buildings, rugby places. They're usually in the smoko area. I've seen plenty in New Zealand, manufacturing around New Zealand.
Yeah, and they're actually, we still see those around. So we still make them. Actually, we still make a lot of those models. Obviously, there's been some modifications. There's a whole new range called Rheem Laser that it's automated, but people are still asking for the old zips. And a lot of those still exist. Every now and again we'll come across. We've got service agents around the country, and I know one of them in Wellington. He sends me a pic every now and again. He'll go to a rugby club or something like that, and there'll be one on the wall from the late 50s. So,
well, that's a testament to a product lasting for far beyond its warranty period. What's it like being in a company where you have such an install base to look after. So you've got all those things like warranties, product support, customer education, but on the other side, you've got to do a whole lot of R&D and introduce new products to the market and then educate people on what those products are. Like, how do you balance those two very different things of existing install base and trying to grow the base?
Yeah, it's really funny, I think, because I was saying before, hot water is a lot like electricity. It's not something you'd think about until it's not there, or breaks down. If you have a power outage, suddenly you realize, oh yeah, I really need electricity for everything. And hot water is pretty similar. It's it's definitely one of those hygiene factors. So for us, it's not really something a consumer ever thinks about, and it's mostly trade. So we're almost one of those brands where you get put in the cupboard, so to speak, because that's where most of the hot water cylinders go, and that's it. You don't really think about it. But trade or plumbers and gas fitters are around the country putting them in all the time, and that's who we try and look after. So the R&D side of it is a lot to do with compliance, because we have New Zealand has the highest standards in the world for compliance and heat loss in water heaters. So Australia is about 20% on some of the products that are 20% lower than ours. So that's the difficult part, I think, is getting those exacting standards, and making sure that they comply, because we get randomly tested by there's a governing body, ECA, and it's not like we make products specifically so that they can take the best of what we made. They might go to any shop around the country and buy various models and test it. So that compliance is really important.
What are they testing for?
Sorry, you go.
Sorry to interrupt, but what is ECA actually testing for? When they pick up one of your units, what are the things that you want it to pass on?
Oh, heat loss is the main thing, So there's about a 50 mil worth of insulation, because most people call the cylinder, there's an inside cylinder, then there's an insulation, there's an outside jacket. And it's a funny story with that is the largest consumer home show event you get in the country is Auckland Home Show. And the insulation has got, better and better over the years. I mean, probably in the 60s, because I found them, there were things that were being used to insulate it might have been rags, in between the cylinder and the jacket. But obviously, as foam came in over time, and we've got better at insulating, what most people have used their water heater for in the water heater cupboard is maybe washing wasn't quite dry, so they took their washing and dumped it into the cupboard. And but we don't have that heat loss anymore, so you're not going to get any heat coming off of the water heater. If anything, you're going to get it off the piping that's coming out of the water heater. So what the funny part for me is that we're at the home show, and it'll happen every single time we're at the home show. Somebody will walk up, because I'm always on the stand, and they'll say, "Oh, your water heaters just don't work like they used to." And I go, "Oh, you're not getting hot water?" No, the hot water's fine, but our clothes aren't drying in the hot water cupboard anymore. Oh, yeah, that's because the insulation has changed over the last 50 years. So, yeah, that's probably the toughest part, is just making sure that we comply with the standards that we've got, which are, as I say, the highest standards in the world.
Now, the other area I wanted to talk about was away from the hot water cylinders that we see, and into what some of the newer houses have with the gas, the unlimited continuous hot water. What's the kind of percentage between those with hot water cylinders, which do take up a bit of room in some smaller houses, and those that shift on to the gas system?
It's a lot lower than Australia. So we're probably at a good guesstimate. We're probably sitting at about maybe 35-40% of the market is gas, and the other 60, possibly 65, is what we call storage water heaters. So we make both. We were known as the water cylinder company, but we do actually make gas as well. The reason why we're probably lower than, say, Australia or some other countries is that we don't have the gas network. that a lot of other countries do. So you've got two types of gas, and you've got natural gas, and which would be a mains line, and then you've got ULPG, which everybody knows is the bottles. So not the same size, but the 9 kg bottles that you use for a barbecue, you get 45 kg versions for hot water. So there's a lot more sales in New Zealand for ULPG versus standard natural gas. And there is a bit of a misconception, I think, with gas versus electricity that you use for storage. Although you can get gas storage products as well that we have. And that's, I guess, because I was mentioning about the insulation, and I think most people kind of think that once the water's in there, it's just bubbling away. But because of the insulation, I mean, most people would have realized when they've had a power outage, the water actually lasts, can last up easily for a day in a modern water heater and still be at the right temperature to have a shower. So because we don't have the heat loss, there's not as much draw of energy as people think. But the biggest advantage then is so it's not just the energy efficiency that people have got a misconception about, but the biggest benefit probably with gas is that if you have power, electricity, and water, then you can take longer showers, because obviously the storage has a limited capacity. So 180 litre water heater, you're probably using about 5 litres a minute, because your average shower is about 10 litres a minute. So obviously there might be a 50-50 mix. In South Island it might be a bit different. You might have 70-30. These are all really probably boring facts for your average homeowner. But yeah, so that's how you can kind of work it out, is go, well, if I've got a 180 litre cylinder, which is the most popular size in New Zealand, and it's taking 5 litres, then I've got, say, 36 minutes of running a shower. So non-stop, which would be 4 people at almost 10 minutes each. Whereas gas, you could keep going. But I think what people don't realize too is, as soon as you get gas and you start doing that and you start having longer showers, your energy costs can go up because, or your water usage, because you're having longer showers now. So the other thing too is probably worth mentioning is globally, in New Zealand compared to most other countries, our electricity is quite green because we're mostly hydro, or geothermal or wind. So we're not burning coal like other countries to make electricity. And so there's a big move globally to electrification and moving away from burning fossil fuels. So gas might not always be the thing, because it is obviously still a fossil fuel. It might be more of a move towards electricity and storage, because at the moment it seems to be the greener option.
That's interesting. So there's more than one variable to consider here as a homeowner if you're needing to or being forced to change your hot water because your existing one has broken. Is there any situation where someone will go to a plumber and say, hey, I want to upgrade without something breaking? As you were saying, it's like electricity. Is there any, what are the kind of compelling reasons for changing what you've got without it breaking first?
Oh, well, I mean, most people will. So we've got a lot of unique situations in New Zealand, and one of them is probably that almost 99% of water cylinders are installed inside the house. So you're reducing the footprint that you've got available for a bathroom, by at least a square meter. And that's not even the height of it, So whereas we've got the complete opposite going on in Australia, because there is a Rheem in Australia, and that most of what they install is outside, and what they produce is for outside installation. And I'm not sure why that is. It might just be a cultural thing. We've just got used to it, and we've always expected it to be inside. And it's not like they're less durable for being outside, because they do get coated, and painted. So, but you would get a lot more use, a lot more space if you installed it outside rather than inside.
I didn't realize you could do that. I thought the reason why you have a hot water cylinder inside is to keep it warm, but you've already solved that through insulation inside the product. So you can put it wherever you want. Is it on top of the roof, or does it sit beside the bathroom or the kitchen on the exterior wall?
Yeah, it's just on the exterior wall. I mean, mostly what they say is keep it as close as you can to the point of use. So you normally have two water heaters, whether they're gas or electricity. So you might have a smaller one. So for gas, you might have a 16-litre near the kitchen outside the wall, and then maybe a 26-litre near the bathroom or bathrooms. And then for the cylinders, you might have, say, a 25 or 45-litre small cylinder near the kitchen, and 180 or 250 in the South Island, just outside the bathroom or bathrooms. Yeah, so I think with Australia, it's mostly got to do with being, we're still quite a sparse country, sparsely built in terms of population-wise. Obviously we've got major cities, but we're not a medium to high density country. We've got quite a big suburban sprawl. And so because of that, we're not really in a situation where we've got duplexes or simplexes, a lot of those types of houses. Most people have their own house, who have their own house, or tenants have a bit of garden around. So so there would be ample space to actually install them outside.
It's a good thing to know if you're renovating a property. That's certainly one way of freeing up space and still being able to plug into the electric network, and if you're not on the gas network. In terms of the organizations you rely on, right? Because Rheem as a company, you're the manufacturer, you're not necessarily the installers. What are the types of things you have to do as a marketing manager to make sure your install base is up to standard with how to install the product, what the products are capable of, getting the best out of it? What do you need to do in terms of the specifiers and the installers?
Oh, listen to feedback. Obviously, yeah. We're very fortunate that the plumbing industry is quite close. It's quite a tight-knit community, and by that I mean there's an association called Master Plumbers that we work closely with. They represent about 2/3 of all the plumbers and gas fitters in the country. And so there's a number of events that they set up during the year that we'll attend. We can get direct feedback from plumbers and gas fitters. And it's there is a Rheem in the US, and they obviously the size and scale of them is massive compared to New Zealand, obviously because of the population. And they're always shocked and stunned when I say that our sales team know most of the plumbers and gas fitters in New Zealand by name, and that they just can't get their heads around it. Yeah, so yeah, in terms of there's about 20,000 plumbers, gas fitters. That includes the apprentices and registered certified plumbers out there, plumbers and gas fitters. So yeah, our main thing is just making sure that we've got two-way communication. And fortunately, we're a small enough country, and there's enough events for us to get around and get that direct feedback. And having somebody like Master Plumbers and working with Master Plumbers makes it a lot easier for us.
Do we have enough plumbers in New Zealand to install the amount of product that people are wanting in the residential, commercial, industrial spaces?
No, it's a massive problem at the moment. And the last figures that I've seen, that we were sitting at about a 35% skill shortage for the plumbing industry, and that's huge. And I can't understand it, because it's so lucrative. I mean, you've got a job where you can run you can pretty much run your own business. I think the stats are very similar for plumbing industry, are very similar to what you've got for the rest of New Zealand in terms of businesses. So 91% of them are SMEs. So it's either owner operated, or they've got them and maybe two apprentices. But trying to get, and we've definitely got an aging demographic. So average age of the plumber now is somewhere around 53. Trying to get school leavers to realise that you could do a 5-year apprenticeship and then own your own business and be earning good money. I mean, most plumbers are great, great Kiwis. They've got a love for the outdoors, and most of them have got a batch or a fishing boat or something of the like. So that's why I say it's a lucrative business. It's a lot of hard work, but it can pay off. And I think it's trying to get that message out there that it's actually a viable career path, for a lot of school leavers, instead of going into university, is to try and get a trade. There's been a lot of work done to try and get that message out there, but I think it's really just unknown that this is a good career path for a lot of school leavers.
And I completely agree. I think it needs to be picked up on more. Is that I keep saying to people that blue collar is the new luxury. The white collar worker, there's lots of them. They're easily replaced. Everyone kind of gets computers and digital commerce and office skills, but the real tangible using your hands to produce things skills, the traditional blue collar, those are the people earning really good money, particularly the ones that have digitized, that do both, right? They do the physical on-site installation, but also understand how to use some of these modern digital tools to get work. But I think what's great about the plumbing industry as such is inbound work. Every day someone calls and says there's something flooding and we need you here and as soon as you can get here. That's a dream for a business.
Yeah, well, touching on that, you're talking about the digital side of things. A lot of plumbers and gas fitters, well, most of them are very tech savvy. So they have to be, because there's so much work coming their way. You'd have to have some kind of software or programs to make sure that you're able to keep track of all the workload. So it's not like they're out of touch with technology. A lot of them are using more and more using technology to aid their businesses. So, and I touched on that. There's a lot of owner-operated plumbers out there, but there's a lot of plumbing businesses that have 30 odd staff, 50 staff, 100 staff. So you could even work your way up in terms of career paths if you wanted to get off the tools, is work your way up the ladder, become an ops manager, become CEO. So it's just like any other business that you've got out there. And you were mentioning about being inundated with phone calls. So there's two main lots of work that they do, and that's, you've got the replacement market, which is what you're talking about, and then you've also got new build. And as we know at the moment, housing, we've got a massive housing shortage in New Zealand. So it's not like the work, as far as we can see, the work's ever going to dry up if you become a plumber or a gas fitter. If anything, it's just getting busier and busier.
Well, that's the type of career you want to enter into. If you're a graduate, you want to enter into something that is growing, that there's plenty of years ahead of work, and you can pave your own way. The Rheem products that you offer, that you also do things that are outside the home. On my research, I looked at your website and found a number of things I wasn't aware of in the commercial use space. Dairy water heating, pool and spa heating, a Guardian system heat exchanger. Talk me through some of the more niche use case products that you've got and what they're used for.
Yeah, so there's a whole other side to it too. We're talking about two different, two main job categories that the plumbers or gas fitters have, and that would be a replacement market and then the new build market. But there's also commercial. So so you had a hospital that was built, an apartment block, university. They've got a greater need for big, robust systems. So I was saying the average hot water cylinder that you have in the country is 180 litres. And in the South Island would be 250 litres. But we've got tanks that go up to 5,000 litres.
Wow.
So, you might install 3 of those in say, something like a university or a hospital. And then you were talking about heat exchangers. So we've got pumping systems. There's solar panels that can go on. It just goes on and on. Our commercial brochure is probably about 3 times as thick as our domestic brochure. So and like you were saying, everything from pool heating, dairy. Dairy is another one where you have tanks that could be anywhere from 700 liters plus. So yeah, there's I mean, I could bore you all day with how many different uses and how many different cylinders there are in water heating, but there are, and I think you mentioned it. One of the questions you were asking a bit earlier too was, you know, how does somebody choose or select a water heater? And there's so many variables involved. You know, definitely got to do with what power they have, and we do actually have a product selector on our website that people can have a look at, but it might end up that you have 4 or 5 options, and so that's why it's always a case of you almost have to you know, talk to your that's why I always go back to the plumbers and gas fitters. They're always the experts. Is the homeowner, you know, should always give them a call and try and find out what's best, because every home is different. You know, we have people who've tried to buy a water heater and then ask the plumber or the gas fitter to install it, but it could be that they were on a low pressure system and didn't realize that they have to go and get a valving or mixers replaced. So it's always best to go back to a plumber or gas fitter.
I'll put the link to that product selector in the show notes, so those people who are listening, whether they're the plumbers or people who are interested in this generally can go straight to it.
Oh, sweet. I'll send it through to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. You've also got Rheem Pro, and that's a login area. What's behind there that I can't currently get access to? Yeah.
No, there's nothing majorly secret in there. What we can't have is, and I think people don't realize, is that you know, there's electricity involved, and so a lot of plumbers do have a limited electrical license, which allows them to undo the element and then rewire it back in. But yeah, so that's why we have a login area, because there's a lot of architects, specifiers, hydraulic engineers that get access to kitchen designers. So not just plumbers and gas fitters. But so we have that login area so that your average homeowner doesn't go and decide that they can, you know, pull out a screwdriver and then undo the wiring.
I see.
We try and keep it to licensed installers.
The Kiwi DIY would certainly, if they found a plan, they'd probably give it a go. So it's probably wise that it's behind locked screens there.
Yeah, and another thing that I realised too, if you haven't closed off the valving and they decide to just rip it out, you could do a lot of damage to your bathroom or kitchen. So that's another part too.
Now, I wanted to ask you about something that I remember with Rheem as a kid, which was this jingle, this Install A Rheem jingle, which for the podcast we'll probably slot in here. Is there any plans to bring that back, or have you used that at all since you've been in the role?
Yeah, well, I tried it for about a year on radio, and it's funny enough, I don't know whether it was that or it's just known for it. But if you know, myself and a lot of the people who work here included, if you ever mention that you work at Rheem, they'll normally, you know, peer up a little bit and they go, "Oh, Install A Rheem," you know. So you get the tagline and the jingle sung back to you quite a lot. Well, but you know, it's kind of a Kiwi icon, so I'm glad that people still remember it. Yeah, in terms of we did try it on radio, and I was thinking about, we're actually working on a campaign at the moment to, you know, sort of bring back the jingle. So over the next 2-3 months, we should have something that comes out. But I guess a lot has moved from you know, normal print media or radio to digital. So a lot of our concentration has been in the digital space.
I've seen that too. You've got an area on your website which links through to YouTube, the Rheem Interactive area, with tons of videos there about the products and about how to use them. Yeah,
funny enough, we actually have a magazine and a digital publication called Rheem Offsite. So because the plumbers and gas fitters are, you know, a lot of them, I think we did a survey there once, and I think it's it's definitely north of 50% of them have either got a fishing boat or, fish themselves. And so offsite just seemed a natural fit for us, because most of the people who work at Rheem, being your typical Kiwis, fish or hunt or do something in the outdoors. So we don't actually do a huge amount. I mean, if you had a look at our Facebook page now, there's not a huge amount of information, but if you went to Rheem offsite, we're posting every second day. There's some story that's going on over there.
I think the benefit you've got with that close-knit plumbing community is they're in your network of influence. So it's relatively easy to, as long as you keep them updated, that keeps the market updated. I'm pretty excited to hear that you're bringing back the jingle this year. Can't wait to see how that evolves, because there's something about nostalgia when you bring it back, particularly through uncertain times. There's always a revert to things that are known and trusted, and some of those things, like both of our brands that we're currently guardians of, are seen as trusted and known and safe, and it gives people a little bit of certainty in uncertain times.
Yeah, I think it's almost a bonus that for the consumer, and this might sound a little odd as a marketer, that we're not thought of. And so when you talk about a water heater, somebody might bring up the name Rheem, but most of the time people aren't thinking about it. And for me, I think that's got a lot to do with the reliability, because once you install it, and the plumber gas fitter has done their job, you're not looking at it again, hopefully, for another 20, 30 years. So, and with the plumber gas fitters, I think we're fortunate there is that sometimes no news is good news. Obviously, we get a lot of feedback and tweaks we can do with the product, but their most precious thing is time. So they don't want a callback. If they've gone and installed something, they need to trust it and make sure that they're not going to have any issues. Because if almost 90% of them are owner operators, and even the bigger companies that may have 30 or 50 staff, the last thing they want is for them to get a call back from a homeowner who's unhappy about something, or it's leaking or not working, and for them to have to sort of down tool straight away and drive back, because they would have lost that time. That there's no way they can build that time back out. So it's almost that's why I say it's almost counterintuitive what I'm saying, but it's almost a good thing that it's not always front of mind, because it's almost taken for granted that if you install a Rheem, you're not going to have any issues, and so there's not going to be any callback. So it's kind of a good thing that shows the reliability and quality of the product.
Yeah, like absolutely. And when you've got an install base that's been around for decades, and we see them ourselves, going to different manufacturing places, it's a product that's lasted, even though you as an organization probably wouldn't mind upgrading a few of those. But you're right, in terms of the plumber, they want to have a good product, because you can only charge that service time once. And having quality products when it comes to something that's bringing water into your house, whether it's Rheem or roofing or flashing, all of those things are critical to keeping a home dry, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So and that's why there hasn't actually been a huge. I mean, in the area of gas there's a lot more moving parts. So there's a lot more in terms of innovation with the products. But I'd say it's just as important for storage water heaters. The progress and the innovation that we've made has mostly got to do with the insulation and ensuring that there's not a lot of heat loss. And so if that means nothing for most homeowners, I think the thing they can take out of that is energy efficiency. So if you're not getting the heat loss, it means that the water heater doesn't draw as much power trying to keep the water warm all the time. And it has to, it has to be at 60 degrees Celsius to ensure there's no Legionella, so no bacteria grows. So there is actually a temperature set that it's supposed to be at, that we have to keep it at, and that's what we work towards.
Brian, a question on your career and how you got started at Rheem. What was the thing that excited you to think, this is the company I want to join? and this is what I want to dedicate my time to.
Well, you can obviously hear a bit of the South African accent over there. So apologies to some of you if you can't understand totally. But I think it started way back when I moved to New Zealand. It was, I started off sailing. So I left South Africa probably 20 years ago and sailed, and I sailed for probably 5 or 6 years, skipped a lot of smaller boats, worked on some super yachts, but the consistent thing through all of the sailing was every single Kiwi I met was a good person. And without fail, there was just no class structure. So very egalitarian culture, it felt like. They would talk to the guy pumping gas, or doing the petrol attendant for your dinghy. They would talk to them the same as they would talk to a billionaire. And there's a lot of multimillionaire billionaires out there. And they would just talk to them the exact same way. And I went, wow, this must be a great country. And then coming here, I worked for a few years as a boat builder, and then got into product management, did a master's in business, and got into the plumbing industry. I used to work for another company called Methven, another Kiwi household name. And then fortunately enough, because the industry is so tight knit, through friends, met RGM and my boss now, John Bevington, who's been in the industry probably about 30 odd years. It's just the average tenure here I think is 17 years. I think when I started my first 6 months, because we have a monthly barbecue, there's a big get together with all the staff. We have teams where there's 100 odd staff there, so there might be 9 or 10 in the team from different departments, and then it's not always a barbecue. They might decide to cook a curry or hamburger patties or whatever you like. And I think it was just the attraction with the culture. It's in that first 6 months there was a guy who was retiring, and he'd been here for 50 years. And I was just astounded. I was, I don't think I've worked for a place longer than 4 or 5 years. And it's not known now. Most people are sort of between the 3 to 5 year scale. So to have met somebody who'd been somewhere for 50 years, and then the more the longer I've been here, the longer I've sort of understood it. I mean, it's just a really good culture, and I think that's why I think it's such a well-known Kiwi brand. Is I think that culture and the values and the enthusiasm and the people somehow that comes through the product, and there's that history behind it too. So I think mostly me working for Rheem is just like it was for me when I was sailing. It's kind of got this really good Kiwi culture.
That's a great insight into both New Zealanders and Rheem as a company. I always like interviewing and chatting with people who aren't from New Zealand, who weren't born here, because your insights about who we are and how we do things are just so objective and clear cut, because you get to compare them with another way, right? And for Kiwis who have never lived in South Africa, that wouldn't even occur to them to think that egalitarian and treating everyone the same is actually an advantage here. But it is for you, because you've seen a different way of life that has, it probably hasn't attracted you as much as New Zealand. And like what you say about Rheem, I think we're very fortunate within the manufacturing community to have those that have served for 5 decades at a time, because of the wealth of knowledge, right? You can go to that person and they can tell you, where something was installed in the 1970s. They remember it. They were the one that installed it. To have that built-in knowledge is what makes quality products.
Yeah, and that knowledge is, it's often passed down. I mean, the mains pressure lines, we call it. A lot of that there's still a lot of manual work that goes into it. But a lot of it is automated. And there's a lot of robots and machinery that are put into it to make it more efficient. So we can keep the cost down for your average homeowner. But and the copper side of it, a lot of it's still done manually. So there might be a guy who's been welding there for 15 or 20 years, and then when he retires and passes it to the next person. you know, he might, you know, I've gone and walked through the factory, and it's not like this all the time. A lot of the stuff is well documented, but they'll have their own sort of cheat sheets about, you know, this is how this is put together. So yeah, that wealth of knowledge getting passed on is quite amazing. Yeah, I'm still, I'm really genuine about it, because I'm astounded that you know, because if you've got a job that's quite repetitive, that you can still enjoy it after that time. And I think it's just got a lot to do with you know, the Kiwi banter that goes on. You know, Kiwis are just really low key, and it's only, like you say, if you're coming from the outside coming in, it's only then maybe you pick up on it, you know. And yeah, even now, I mean, my wife's a New Zealander. She's from the South Island. She's from Alexandra in Central Otago, you know, and they're very, very low key is the way I can describe it. Yeah, there's no fuss, no dramas, you know, and that's very appealing for somebody like myself.
I like what you said there about the banter. It does carry construction. It does carry the tradie industry. There's in jokes and there's in jokes, and then there's site jokes, and these things evolve. But what I also just brought to mind there when you talked about the welding side of it, I've seen through, like, you know, Instagram, there's hashtags where people are showing off their welds, showing off the perfection in every weld and comparing it to other tradies and other industries around the world, showing how perfect and complex their welds are. And I think that's part of manufacturing, is getting the day to day, when you do it over and over, getting it perfect. It's a practice to keep going, and the banter just rides on top of it to make it not so serious. There's a bit of fun to be had as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a social club here. So obviously it's not compulsory; it's completely voluntary. And you know, a lot of the people here, there's two guys that I have lunch with every day, Dave and Chris, and the two of them have been working here for 33 years each. They started about 2 to 3 months apart. You know, so you know, they're big proponents of the social club. You know, and there's when people still want to get together after work, and that's your kind of circle of friends, then it does say something about you know, I guess Rheem and the manufacturing industry in New Zealand. It's just it's yeah, I can't say enough about it, because it might sound almost disingenuous, but it's just so refreshing to see that you know, people still get a job satisfaction. It can still be a really tight-knit community, even though you're still at work. I mean, you know, if we all had our choice, everybody would love to win the lotto and just go hang out somewhere. But if you're going to be working, it's good that you know, you can still get along with everybody that you're around. You know, it makes for a good day.
Absolutely right. And I think from what you've communicated, not just to me, but to the New Zealand Made audience today, what a great place to work. And, you know, appreciate you sharing so openly about the company and about the products that you offer. And I think for those who are still deciding that, and we have plenty of students who listen to this, still deciding on that career, look at one that involves a trade, that involves manufacturing, whether it's plumbing, construction, something to help alleviate the housing crisis. And at the same time, maybe buy yourself that batch and boat once you've done your apprenticeship and put in a few years hard work. Usually I ask this as I'm finishing up, Brian, is there anything else that I haven't asked you or should have asked you before we wrap up?
Oh, just on that career path, two industry bodies that would really like to help out would be the Apprenticeship Training Trust, ATT. If you just, you know, we can send a link through, and also Masterlink from Master Plumbers. So they will, so it's not like any school leaver kind of just has to go and call a plumber and try and figure out a career path. If they call ATT or Masterlink, they can actually give them some direction, and they also act as an employment agency. So they take all the hassle out of what do I need to do next, and, you know, all the sort of questions you go through. And also, I would think too, also as a parent, it's something that you'd probably, you know, want to know. So if parents or school leavers are trying to decide on a career path, is to give ATT or Masterlink a shout.
Great. We'll make sure that's in the show notes as well.
Sweet.
Thank you very much for your time today, Brian. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to sharing this with the Kiwi Original podcast and also the Buy New Zealand Made fans and fellow manufacturers that listen to this that comes out every week.